Again, welcome everybody, and we are, as always, very happy to welcome this evening, this afternoon, this morning, depending on your time zone, Pravrajika Gitaprana, who is a longtime friend of our society. Mataji is the minister in residence at the historical Vivekananda Retreat, Ridgeley, which was founded in 1997, dedicated to preserving and continuing the universal teachings of Swami Vivekananda. It was here at Ridgeley where Swami Vivekananda himself would retreat for periods of rest and quiet at the invitation of the Ridgeley family, who would offer their guru the use of their home, as a country refuge for some peace and quiet. Since 2004, Mataji has presided over this 82-acre retreat, which in non-COVID times offers retreatants opportunities to deepen one's spiritual practice in a beautiful, quiet, and peaceful atmosphere. Prior to taking charge of the Ridgeley retreat, Pravrajika Gitaprana was a monastic since 1984 at the Vedanta Society of Southern California, under the leadership of revered Swami Swahanandaji. She is a very popular speaker within the Vedanta family and also very active in the interfaith community. So I would welcome you again, Mataji, and ask you to speak on your subject today, which is the world and the mother. Thank you.
I'll start with a chant, one that's familiar to all of us. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karava Vahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. And I'll read Swami Prabhupananda's translation to that. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us. May he give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om, peace, peace, peace. And I know that my New York friends know that I think this is kind of an odd translation. And it's a difficult Sanskrit chant to translate into English. But the last line, where it says in Sanskrit, ma vidushavhai, which he translates as may love and harmony be with us all. What it actually says is very appropriate for this time. It says, may we not desire to hate each other, dvish, to hate. And we see a lot of that going on right now, especially in the United States. So it's very appropriate that in a certain way. A little bit about Ridgeley. I only see, by the way, just a little, I see Paula and I see some other people, but I don't see a whole lot of you out there. And so it's kind of peculiar. But Ridgeley, as Diane has said, which is mainly has the function of acting as a pilgrimage center and a retreat center, is different from, I think, most of the other Vedanta societies in that we are classified by the local health department as a temporary residence. And this being New York with very strict rules during the pandemic, and that being the case, the rules for us to allow people to come here are really, really strict and make it almost impossible for us to open up. So we've been closed. We were closed kind of in a semi way over the winter, and then that went straight to the pandemic. So we've been closed all during the pandemic, and we will continue to be closed for quite some time yet. Basically for us, we are going to have to require people to give us proof that they've been vaccinated to stay here. And until that happens, we can't open. And we miss you all. We really do. And we really missed our 4th of July program and your program and all the different visitors, even here, following the guidelines of some of the medical advisors on our board. We who live in the different 3 houses are separated from each other. So our only socializing goes on if we're outside. And we do socialize, but still it's very, very set apart. And we are hoping and praying that we'll be able again to see you in person sometime next year. Let us all hope. So the one good thing about the pandemic is that it has started all these wonderful online classes and things that hadn't happened before. And you have so many opportunities to listen, to talk, which is a wonderful outcome of a horrible thing. We haven't been doing Zooms or Facebook Lives or anything like that because I thought, well, you know, there's so many other choices. And truly, I thought maybe by the summertime we would be open, but haha to that. And so we will start doing them, Zoom classes soon. If you're interested, you'll have to email me and I'll put you on the list. So my topic, this is going to be an informal talk that somehow I feel like sitting in my office talking to the computer can't be anything but somewhat informal. And my topic is the mother and her world, the mother and the world. And I did have more of an organized talk that I was thinking about giving. And at the last minute, I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. So I want to start with a story. And it's a reminiscence actually about Swami Swahanandaji, who happens to be my teacher. And you may not know, but Swami Swahananda had, most people know him as having been kind of friendly, kind of person, somewhat laid back. I don't know exactly how, very loving, kind, and compassionate. And he was all those things. But in addition to that, for those of us who knew him well, and that was the monastics of Hollywood Center and the younger ones in particular, who were his disciples, and also the young devotees, we also knew a different kind of Swami. And I had a really wonderful relationship with him. And so if I maintained an attitude of respect, I could say just about anything that I wanted to him. And I did. And so I knew that Swami Swahananda was brilliant, really brilliant. And this is the man who translated the Chandogya Upanishad, who wrote so many articles, was editor of the Vedanta Keshari. What he didn't know about Vedanta wasn't much. And in his young monastic days, he was known for his zeal, for his enthusiasm, and his strict adherence to sort of a monastic way of life. And so that being said, well, I could tell you, he once in a while would challenge me to a philosophical debate. And it was a test. And there was no getting out of it. And he would get this kind of glint in his eye and a smile in his face, and he'd throw down the gauntlet. He'd throw down some philosophical thing and demand that I answer it. And I knew I would lose before I even opened my mouth because his mind worked so fast. It was almost impossible to keep up with him. And he would switch positions midway from one, he would take a dualistic position and then a semi-dualistic position and then an Advaitic position and then bam, 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 so fast that I, who am not, I'm not slow, I couldn't follow him at all. And it would always end up with me just kind of ending up in laughing confusion. So that being said, Swami Swahananda often would get up in the Sunday lectures when he was going to speak on Vedanta. And basically the gist of the lecture would be, well, all you have to do is think about God once in a while. And I would say to him, Maharaj, why do you water it down so much? You know, all in my young monastic zeal, I was thinking, oh, he's watering the whole thing down. Oh, all you have to do is once in a while. And I didn't ask him, maybe once every few years, I would ask him again, and he would never answer. And we knew that if he didn't say, he's not gonna say. And so it was not too long before I came to Ridgeley, I guess. We came up again. And he said, well, you see, when I go in and give a talk, I'm not talking to the people who have a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of zeal. Those people will always be able to take care of themselves. They'll always find a way. They'll always be able to go and find an answer if they need it. They don't need me. What I'm doing is I'm talking to the one person in the temple whose life may be hanging by a thread. That's the person I'm talking to. And at the time I thought, okay, yeah. I wasn't totally convinced. And then the pandemic came along and I started really thinking about that. That one thing that the pandemic has done is it has pushed everybody to the point of something. But to the point of some people's health, some people's mental health, some people don't have jobs anymore, some people's money are running out, people are angry, people are scared, people are just at the edge, very, very stressed out. Wouldn't you agree? That no matter where in the world, this pandemic started suddenly and has affected everybody in a certain way. And some places in the world are more accustomed to having these kind of disasters. But in the United States, we're a little bit spoiled and it came out of nowhere and people don't know what to do. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. So, and we had the election on top of it, which added extra stress. And the West Coast was on fire and the South got hit by what, 4 or 5 hurricanes. And it just seems that this year, the news is just, it doesn't get any better ever. And there's a meme, I'm kind of wandering, but you may have seen it. It's a joke. It's, you know, Time magazine, excuse me, picks the person of the year every year. And so the meme being passed around on the internet shows a photograph of what looks like Time magazine's cover with the person of the year. And so it looks like Time, and the person is a man in a business suit who clearly has been in a fight, who has black eye and his cheek is all taped up with butterfly bandages and he has stitches and he's smiling. And the person of the year says, mayhem, his best year ever. So we may feel like that. So I kind of feel like a formal talk and a lot of philosophy isn't the direction I want to go exactly. We may be wondering, and I'm sure everyone's wondering, like, why? and everyone has some kind of maybe explanation in their mind. But I want to talk about the mother in the world and kind of set a scene that might be useful, because everybody has a different life and everybody has a different spiritual life and everybody has a different way of relating to the divine. So if you recall, Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita does kind of the same thing. He takes Arjuna first to the cosmic picture. So if we're talking about the mother, we immediately need to consider, and when I say this, I mean each one of us needs to consider for ourselves. Sri Ramakrishna, for instance, statement, Kali and Brahman are one. And so when we talk about the mother in a certain way, we can never leave that behind. Now, when we get into this, we also get into the limitation of concepts and language, as the Vedanta is always pointing out. We have this word Brahman, and with our minds that are made of structures of concepts, we immediately conceptualize this Brahman. And we have a name, Brahman, and we think of Brahman as an it, or sometimes he even, or something out there, or something at all. And this is the limitation of language. This is the limitation of concept, that we are talking and thinking about, you could call it a reality that lies entirely beyond any ability of ours to think about it or to conceptualize it or talk about it, and yet we have to talk about it. So we need to remember that and examine our own minds to see if we are making Brahman into a thing, into an object. Because, or say, for instance, the Vedanta will say, okay, infinite, undivided, unchanging. Those also are concepts. And we may think infinite, and I know I've said this in New York before, infinite is not a number. Infinite is not like a number times, the highest possible power of whatever. So again, undivided. Well, that also is a concept. And unchanging also is a concept. And we are always measuring it against separation. The separation of what? The separation that we experience. There's me, there's I, and not I. So we automatically think, oh, well, Brahman, not I. Mother, not I. Something else, something out there, and I don't know what. So one of the things I feel really necessary when we're talking at all about any of these concepts is to understand that they are beyond concepts completely. We cannot conceptualize that reality at all. In fact, there's no we that can do it anyhow. So we may say, okay, fine, oneness. It's oneness. It's all one. That also is a concept. Oneness, we don't even need a word for oneness if there's no dividedness. So we have to keep, this is the largest picture. Behind this all, and even behind is the wrong word, lies this reality that is called with various names, but let's limit it to Brahman here, which is a word that no doubt you know means vast or, enormous. But it isn't vast or enormous. And the Upanishads, of course, are good at saying what it's not, but that still conceptualizes because it might be something other than what it's not. Now, I know I'm making no sense at all because I want to make no sense at all. What I want is to set the idea, the being, the existence of the mother against this true formlessness, this true outside of all conceptualizations, that which is that, all of these things. Kali and Brahman are one. And I'm not talking specifically about Kali. That's what Sri Ramakrishna said. The mother and Brahman are one. That means that the ultimate existence of the mother is none other than that indescribable reality. So our experience, of course, is of manifestation. This world and our various apparatuses, is that a word, of consciousness limit us to a certain part of the world. And then, of course, where we live, what we're doing, there's worlds within worlds within worlds. So how do we explain that against this, what would you call it, this Brahman, this vast, unexplainable? So we can say that this infinite reality has infinite power, infinite Shakti, from Shak to be able, infinite ability to manifest, infinite. So again, we have to consider, what is this meaning infinite? It has no beginning. It has no end. It just is, and it's infinite. So we might be tempted to limit that infinite, but infinite manifestation is the very essence of what we call the mother. And the mother is not different from Brahman. So we might limit our understanding of the mother and thereby kind of cut ourselves off from a pathway of spiritual practice that is truly ours by birthright. That all ideas of the mother, whether you call her Kali, whether you call her whether you call her Durga, Tara, Mary, Inanna, all those forms of mother, my language is messing me up, they are that Brahman. So this is the interesting thing. We need to think about infinite manifestation, that worlds within worlds, we know this already, nano worlds inside the human body, there are so many worlds. In macro worlds, the modern physics knows that there may be multiverses, and inside those multiverses there are more, and it's always, always changing and becoming infinitely. So it's almost impossible to imagine, but some of the scriptures that had their birth in India have done a very good job at what we used to say in the hippie era of blowing your mind. And one of them I can think of is the Yoga Vashishta, which often tries to take just kind of ordinary consciousness and dump it off the edge of infinity by talking about universes that exist inside of rocks and things like that. And then we have to consider that probably every thought that we think takes on a universe of its own, and combine that with the infinite manifestation of infinite lives, of which we are only aware of a certain type with our specific physical attributes. So we have to take the larger picture, and all of that, which we cannot know, but surrounds us, I guess you could say, that is also the mother. So then we come to this idea of the mother, and virtually every culture has some connection with the mother of all. You know that, as I said, in every culture, all the indigenous cultures, the ancient cultures, there's Isis, Inanna, there's all the goddesses of India. In Buddhism, it actually has a different philosophical background, has Tara and Kuan Yin and many others. There's, of course, in the Christian world, Mary. And Mary herself, you may or may not know, as Christianity sometimes bulldozed its way through the world, the concept, the idea of Mary, the mother, merged with whatever the local indigenous tradition was and became something a little different. So the Mary of Latin America is different, and the Mary of the Caribbean is different, and the Mary of the Greek Orthodox and the Russian Orthodox world are different. And inside those, say for instance, inside Roman Catholicism or Eastern Orthodox Christianity, there are many forms of Mary. And they have names: loving kindness, the mother of all who sorrow, the mother of the disappeared, La Soledad. There are so many. And in the same way as in India, people have relationships with those Marys, with the different Devis, with the different goddesses. People have a strong bond with the different Marys. So these ideas have been there all along. So we've come down now to a level of the Mary of the world, the mother of the world in her many, many, many forms. And it's good to remember that too, because people get into this, my Devi, your Devi. Well, I worship Durga. Well, I worship Kali, where I'm a Christian and I am Mary. And but there's only one mother. And so it's not helpful really to worry about these things. And the most important mother is the one that each one of us relates to. Do you know what I mean? That we may have heard of stories of, we may have heard of, say, for instance, oh, sure, I'm a Krishna, worship Kali, but we have no connection there. In fact, we are repulsed. Or we may feel like, well, I kind of like such and such a goddess, but I've been told X. In these times, I feel that we need to follow our heart. We really do. Because if our faith is dwindling, or we're stressed out and hanging by a thread, as Swami Swahananda said, we need to develop a deep and personal relationship with the divine in a way that is unique to us, to our mind and our heart. And at the same time, remember, we're talking about the mother of all, the mother who is infinite manifestation, the mother who is Brahman. So it's kind of like a balancing act that, well, we can't, this Brahman, how on earth am I supposed to relate to that? We don't have to, because we are that. This is crazy, I know, it seems, but we can relate to a personal part of that. We can relate to the mother. Or if we're not into the mother, we can relate to God in whatever form we choose. And if we don't like the idea of God with form, we can relate in our own way to the formless, I guess you could say, or God with qualities, those kinds of things. Whatever it is, we need at this time especially to forget about a lot of the philosophy. And there's so many fantastic speakers who can help you with that. And we need to not worry so much about what we can do and what we can't do, but we do need to forge a tie with the divine. Because otherwise I feel we will be overwhelmed with, all I have to do is turn on the news. And what do you see? Mayhem. And as you know, the news deals with bad news. And you rarely see the good news. And even if we think that it's not affecting us, it is. And slowly, slowly, day after day, we may be finding ourselves losing our enthusiasm, wondering, not even interested. It's like, all this Vedanta stuff, forget it. Or we might be actually coming closer. So we have to do what we do. Now, the mother, we can worship in a form. And the wonderful thing about that is that she is every form. And it's also horrifying at the same time. That she is every loving form. She is the mother of all. And at the same time, she is Mr. Mayhem. That it's all of what is happening, the death, the sickness. I don't know if you know this, but the sister that I live with, Pravrajika, probably had COVID back in March, and she was really, really sick. And we know, if you live in New York, you know people who died. And now, of course, everywhere. But all the uncertainty, all the people saying, no, it's this way, no, it's that way, no, it's this way. It's so confusing. All the people that I know who, from my 20 years in Hollywood, who belong to the entertainment industry, who currently are totally unemployed and have they don't know when they're going to be back, if they'll be back. And as the money dwindles and dwindles and dwindles, and all the people whose children are having to be educated at home, and how confusing that is, and trying to work at the same time, that it just goes on and on. So it's easy and it's very subtle to get lost. And so I think that I've been thinking about this for a long time. Swami Swahananda's advice is really, really good. That we may not be able to do the spiritual practices that we had envisioned ourselves doing. And for all these different reasons. We may not, or maybe we have more time and we're doing more, for all I know. But we need to find a way of linking our heart and our enthusiasm to the divine, and say to the mother, throughout the day. That otherwise we're going to be carried away. We're going to look at what CNN and see the next disaster. And no, we need to link there. And I believe also we really personally need to find that link. Now there's another level down that I haven't really talked about. And that is the ability of the divine, to put it in kind of simplistic terms, to do anything. That there is nothing in manifestation that cannot, that there, every possibility can be manifest for the divine, yes? Because if there was something the divine could not do, then the definition, whether you want to call it God, whether you want to call it divine or the mother or Brahman, blows out of the water. If Brahman is unlimited, there can't be a limitation there. And so let us consider the fact that the divine can actually, in a certain way, assume a human form. Now, we're all the human forms of the divine, but in this case, I mean a direct form. And you know that I'm probably speaking in the Vaishnava tradition has the word avatar, which some of you know I don't like to bandy about too much, because I kind of feel like none of us understand what that means. That we can have the definitions, we can hear other people talk about it, but this, like the word Brahman, is a concept, and it goes so far beyond what we can understand that it's best just to not get too worried about it. But I personally believe that however mysteriously the divine does manifest purely through certain beings. And since we're human, we're talking about humans. So you can call them avatars, you can call them Buddhism, which doesn't really have an idea of God. You can say living Buddha. You can call them saints. You can call them incarnations. Their being and their being in the world acts as a light for the rest of our consciousness. And so, since we're talking about the mother, and since we're in this season, I truly believe that Sri Sharda Devi was and continues to be a, what do you call it? A light through which the mother shines directly. And so if all of these more universal concepts seem distant to us, we can relate to a human who embodies all of these. And I've been doing that. You know, I've been going back and rereading Swami Chaitanananda's wonderful book on Sri Sharda Devi. And things jump out at me. I mean, I've been doing this since I was 18, and now I'm 64 almost. Things jump out at me that are new every time. Same with the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, same with the scriptures, but some of the things that the mother says, now I'm talking about Sri Sharda Devi, I feel like the Divine Mother is speaking directly to me. And I feel that if we're reading the gospel or we're reading the life of Sri Sharda Devi, where some of the things, reminiscences, where some of the things that she said are written down, that they're meant for us. I know it's kind of wild. I've said this before, but when we're talking about the conversations in the gospel or the conversations that are recorded about Sri Sharda Devi, we may feel, oh, that happened back then and I wasn't there. More's the pity. And I'm just here and now there's a pandemic. But those lives, those conversations, in a certain way, are meant not just for the people who were the receivers of, who were in the conversation right back then, but they're meant for those of us who see them and hear them. This is the divine transcending time, space, name, and form. And we can derive really, really wonderful benefit by reading those things as if Sri Ramakrishna, as if Holy Mother, as if Jesus in the Bible were talking directly to us, because they are. And so we see Sri Sharda Devi insisting over and over again, even when she's challenged, that she's not just, she's everybody's mother. And maybe, say, for instance, Swami Arupananda says to her, but I have a mother. I have a mother at home. And so Sharda Devi says to him, oh, well, that's your mother at home. What is she? I am the mother of all. I am your mother. And another person is taking leave of her. I forget the story. And she says to him, you need to remember this one thing. You have a mother. So this is wonderful if we really think about this. And we do ourselves, I believe, a disservice if we think, oh, well, that was back then and there in some village in Bengal, and I'm not there. It's now, it's right now. Oh, she's dead. Are you thinking, is it true? So this mother of all, who is vast and almost unapproachable, is also totally approachable. And reading some of the things that have been said by whichever holy one that you prefer, makes the connection. Another connection is the mother knows everything, right? Does that make sense to you? She knows our deepest thought. So there's no reason, as Sri Ramakrishna says, that you cannot take every little problem, every little thought that you have directly to her. You can say, this is going to be backwards, but I think I can show you. Put a mother by your desk. You can't see it because of the light, and say, like, what are you doing? That or whatever, that put a reminder in whatever way it is. It doesn't have to be a photograph. It doesn't have to be a Morty. It can be anything. It could be a shell. It could be a book. But it has to be meaningful for you. Something totally meaningful that somebody else might say, what is that there for? And you don't have to answer. So putting reminders all about. We need to connect. We need to connect. We're so distracted. We're getting more distracted. So how do we connect? We need to examine our minds and know where our tendencies lie, or what we believe, if what we believe just in our lives and the stories that we tell are actually getting in the way of causing us suffering, I could say. We need to use the Buddhist tradition has the and I think he possibly borrowed from the ancient Indian tradition, the idea of our spiritual life should be like a bird. And one wing is what we would call wisdom, viveka vichara, discernment, and taking the larger picture. And the other wing is devotion. It's love, it's compassion, it's kindness. And it's steered by the tail of meditation, contemplation, reflection. So you immediately say, well, how can I meditate? I can't meditate now. My mind is so full of things. But we can reflect. We can try to do our meditation. We can sit there and let our mind be full of things. But there are so many ways to meditate. There are so many ways to be still. One of the things that we need to do, and especially now, I'm looking at the clock, that is we can't just rush in and plunk ourselves down on the meditation cushion and expect that we will be able to meditate. We need to set aside a little time to pull ourselves in, however we want to do that, you know, and everyone will do that differently. Music, art, reading, but we can't just run in there. And I'm speaking from experience because I do this, and expect that our mind is going to be unburdened. And likewise, we can't be too worried about the state of our mind when we sit there, because we just have to accept that right now we may be much more disturbed than we might have been. And just be patient. And don't expect something, just sit. Prayer, the same way, that you can't rush into prayer, if formal prayer. It would be better, again, to take some time and then move into it. We can make any old little saying a prayer during the day, because we're all in different situations. You know, a rebuke can be a prayer. Like, Ma, what are you doing? It connects. Whatever we can do to connect in the life that we have, which right now is strangely messed up. And even if we are depressed, and I know severe depression, people just say, I'm just not going to do it. I just don't want to get out of my chair. I just have no motivation whatsoever. If we get into that, we can do japa. We have a mouth, we have a mind still. Repeat the names, or just start talking. You know, we're all getting used to talking to nobody, whether it's the computer or whatever. If we still had our dogs, they would be barking because they would say, what are you doing? Talking to nobody. So we can talk to the mother, talk constantly, talk to God. We can. One of the things I regret the most of all the things that I've we had a retreatant here at Ridgeley, and it was before the Sunday class, and I wasn't there. And the different people who come to the class and that particular retreatant had already gotten to a conversation about people who talk to God. And she, I guess, was maintaining that, oh, well, I have a friend talks to God all the time. And other people were telling her, you think it's that easy? And so I came along and they decided to ask me, and really stupidly, I believe, I said, well, really, it takes kind of a very evolved, kind of high, expanded consciousness to truly talk to God. Now, I totally regret that. Anyone can talk to God. And even when we're talking to ourselves, we're talking to God, to the mother. So connecting with other people is talking to the mother. anytime we counteract fear or anger with kindness and compassion, we're talking to the mother. So there's so many ways. I think it's probably time for Q&A. And I have to say, I was tempted to make this whole talk into Q&A, but decided not to at the end. So I'll leave with you that. It's what I want to convey more than anything at this time is don't worry about your traditional spiritual life. Does that make sense? Do whatever you can do in the circumstances that you find yourselves in, to make a connection in whatever way, even if it seems totally ridiculous, with the divine. Because we are always connected with the divine. You know, as Sri Ramakrishna says, the wind of grace is always blowing. We don't have to earn it. It's always there. We just have to plug our, connector in. And we do that each one in our own way. And don't worry about results. Don't even think about it. And finally, to say, someone will say, well, why is the mother doing this? There's no answer to that. Only you can come up with an answer that will satisfy you. Only I can come up with an answer to satisfy me. And I know I'm saying, I'm not even going to try to ask that question. I'm just going to go to the next moment and the next moment and try to connect and not even worry about the result. Just do it. So that's my strange talk for today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them if I can.
Anyone has a question, you can either raise your hand or just unmute yourself, or also ask in the chat.
Gitaprana.
Hi.
Hi. Gitaprana, I have a question. I don't have the quote, but it's it might even be in poem form, but Swami Vivekananda said something which sounded like a chastisement, saying that no one, you will never understand the greatness of the mother. Am I in the right ballpark there of saying
Probably,
that?
Yeah.
Is he referring to, in general terms, the Divine Mother, or is he referring to Sarada Devi?
That I don't know, because I don't know exactly which quote, but I think it probably refers in one place or another to one or the other, because I know he said that at different times about both. And especially, he's definitely said that about Sarada Devi.
All right.
And so that, but I don't know the quote offhand, so I think it's true. If she is the direct conduit for the mother herself, who can understand that? And in other words, understanding doesn't even go there. We have to live our way into the truth.
Thank you.
Mataji, if I may.
Yeah.
Something that you said at the very beginning that intrigued me about Swami Swanandaji. I've always thought that, he was, he translated the Chandogya Upanishad, and I've heard that he was very staunchly non-dualistic. Chandogya Upanishad being one of the most difficult texts, abstruse texts to translate. And the very little I saw of him, only at Belur Math, and he was this very senior monk visiting from the United States, and I was a junior brahmachari. So I never really spoke with him one-to-one. But I noticed what you said. He seemed laid back, he seemed very inclusive and very, not intensely, focusing on non-duality, on Advaita Vedanta alone. Not at all that. I mean, he was generally encouraging everybody to do whatever they could. is this a transition that happened? Because you have seen him from the early 80s. Did you see this happening? Was it something that he became more mother-like? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, it was always a little bit of a, once in a while, that side of him would come. And he used to talk about that, about Swami Prameshananda Maharaj, the very same thing. How could a man who is so staunchly dualistic then in the next moment flip into such a devotional mood? And he said, when I was young and the other young monks, we could never understand that. But I can't remember exactly what he said, but he was indicating that he was starting to himself. He was kind of, when I knew him, he was more leaving aside. My understanding from him was that he was so staunchly Advaitic and monastically inclined that the other monks were kind of intimidated by him. And because his birth name was Bipad Bhanjan, and Bipad could be construed as meaning danger, they used to put the sign up on his whatever that said Bipad for that very reason. But he could in a moment. And the interesting thing is, in his Berkeley days, and I was too young, I think I heard one lecture in his Berkeley days and I was only 12. But he was much more staunchly Advaitic. But I think his experience with people modified that. I remember one thing that I still think about all the time is, I think it was Akanda Prana and I got sannyas vows together. And so, as in the United States, the women associated with the Ramakrishna mission don't go to India for sannyas vows, and instead 5 heads of center, or is it just sadhus, I can't remember, come to give the vows. So one Swami was there and was giving a talk to everybody on monastic life, and it was really a good talk, and it was very definite, I guess you could say. That was the word. Oh, it was very inspirational, and it was very, yes, this. And I happened to walk out of the temple when the talk was over, right behind Swami Swahananda. And he turned around and he saw it was me, and he said, "Bah, he is very definite." And then he said, "I'm not so sure anymore." And then he walked away. And it said to me a lot, that he had started out in a certain definite way, but he came to understand that there's so much more. And I can tell you from personal experience, he was devoted. He had his spiritual life, which he loved to hide from everybody. And once in a while got a glimpse, and it was definitely devotionally oriented. So he could go back and forth. And certainly there wasn't much about Advaita Vedanta. He knew it was impossible to best him at any kind of argument. It was hopeless, but he used to force us to try. So from what I learned from him, and I think I probably told this story before, and it helps for everybody, I think. As Swami Sarvapriyanandaji has said, I knew him for a long, long time, and I also acted as one of his sevaks, one of his helpers. And I was 20, I met him when I was 12, but when I joined, I was 25, 26. And so he always deflected questions. I wasn't really one that asked too many questions, but if I ever asked him a question, he said, "Oh, figure it out yourself." Literally, that's what he said. And so right before I came to Ridgeley, so this would have been 2004 sometime, I was taking a walk with him, and I asked him something, I forget what. And he said, "In all the years that you've known me, have I ever answered one of your questions?" And I laughed and I said, "No." And he said, "I did that on purpose. Do you know why?" And I kind of had an idea why, so I didn't say anything. I said, "You have to figure those things out. You have to see all viewpoints. You have to have some familiarity with everybody's way of relating to the divine. Because if someone is fed the answers constantly, then you will only know that one way, and you will not be able to relate to everyone." So he'd been sometimes criticized for not training monastics, so being too kind of laid back. And he said, "I trained you. Do you know that?" And I said, "Yeah, I know it." So I think he was Advaitic at the core and devotional in practice.
Yes, that's a wonderful observation.
And could move like lightning between the two. But usually like to deflect everything. And I'm off on a tangent, but he liked to hide kind of his interior life completely. And often, if you know him, like to chit chat about politics, about this, about that. He used to drive us young nuns mad. We would go into a class, say Chandogya Upanishad, and he's starting to talk about politics. And, but it was a test. So, like that. Haha, I see you, you know. Subrata, you know.
Yeah, I had some good fortune to spend some time with him. And I used to ask him a couple of questions, and he used to defer that to my guru, Swami Tathagata ji, Swami T. And he was so humble, and he was so, he gave dues to the proper authority, go find it by yourself, figure it out by yourself, or you ask your own guru if you cannot. That's the perfect way to, not deflecting the question, but that's the proper way to answer the question, I think.
Yeah, that truly we can rely on answers and we should rely on the scriptures to a certain extent, and we should certainly rely on the teachings of our teacher, on the guru. But it's up to us, and we have to make all those teachings our own. Otherwise, we'll be like parrots. When I was in India a long time ago, I guess it was like 1990, Swami, senior moment, vice president of the order who lived in Chennai.
Swami Tapasyanandaji?
Yeah, Tapasyanandaji. I was in India with my aunt, who is a devotee, a lifelong devotee, and another lifelong devotee, and we went to visit Swami Tapasyanandaji. And my aunt and her friend were kind of what you would call fanatic Advaitins. I mean, fanatic. And they started to talk to him, and he, as I understand, always would not liked to throw down an argument in front of somebody. And so he told my aunt and her friend, "You Advaitins are like parrots. You don't know what you're talking about. You just talk. You're mouthing words and with no experience behind it." And they did not like to hear that. But I've been thinking about it, and that's a kind of a problem that we might have with our spiritual life. that we've heard so many things and read so many things. We can say exactly what Arjuna asked Sri Krishna in the Gita, but did we internalize it? That's the important thing. Did we make it our own? And that's why, of course, Swami Swahananda refused to answer questions.
The question is, your lecture indicates that mother can be a conduit for personal connection to the divine. While japa and hymns are good, how can we encourage a dialogue instead of a regular monologue that is complaining?
That's a really good question. Because sometimes I think that our ideas and our notions of what should happen get in the way of what the mother is actually saying. Do you know what I mean? That we have our ideas that the mother should appear in a certain way, that should talk to us in a certain way. We've got our pet concepts, and all the time the mother is talking to us, and maybe in a way that we hadn't even considered. Say, for instance, right now she's talking to all of us through the pandemic. And can we hear that? And each one of us will hear that in a different way. I also think that people can get a little bit off track sometimes, thinking that God told them to do X, Y, and Z, and they're pretty sure of that. So as always, we need discernment. So we need to listen. Sometimes also, let's just say the mother does answer or does speak, but not in our time. So and I can attest to that. And maybe not in a way that we even imagined. So we have to be open. I think the mother's voice is not necessarily a voice. It may be something that appears in our life or isn't in our life, like that. We have to kind of have an open mind towards everything, and on the other side, maintain some kind of discernment about it, or we could be misled by the ideas of our own mind that we think is the mother or God or whatever.
Well, Mataji, I think we've run out of time, and
oh yeah.
And I just want to, on behalf of everybody, our profound thanks to you for helping us to cut through this mayhem. And also the fascinating reminiscences. It's very, very interesting, and thank you so much. And I think I can reiterate what you said, which is our hope that we will see each other again soon, all of us. So
yes, we hope so. Yes. In the meantime, Jai Ma, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Salutations to all of you that I don't see on my screen, but I know are there. Thank you.
Stay well, Mataji. Stay well.
You too. Stay well, stay safe.